Night 1 was the camera that could not see. Night 2 was the Saturday that sealed her fate. Tonight is Night 3. 9:50 p.m., January 31st. The garage door at Nancy Guthrie's home in the Catalina foothills closes. Her son-in-law Tommaso watches it seal shut, then drives away into the Arizona night. 1:47 a.m. The doorbell camera disconnects from its network. 3 hours and 57 minutes between those two events. 4 hours. That number has appeared in every timeline published about this case, every press conference summary, every news report since February 1st. And in 51 days of national coverage, not one reporter, not one analyst, not one anchor has stopped to ask the question sitting directly inside those 4 hours. Why did he wait until 2 a.m.? Not midnight, not an hour after she got home, not immediately after Tommaso left. 2 in the morning, 4 hours of controlled, deliberate, patient waiting. That question matters more than almost anything else in this investigation, because the answer tells you exactly what kind of person planned this, and it tells you something the FBI already knows but has not said out loud. Here is what investigators have confirmed about the person who came to Nancy Guthrie's door that night. He visited that address on at least 2 separate occasions before the abduction. January 11th, January 24th, 3 weeks apart. He wore gloves on both visits. He wore a hat pulled low over his face. On the night of the abduction, he carried a 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack, packed and ready. He had a gun holster visible on his body. He had a walkie-talkie. He had equipment consistent with weeks of preparation, not hours. And according to sources confirmed by ABC News this week, investigators now believe the January 11th visit was reconnaissance, a dry run. He stood at her door. He looked at the camera. He tested the environment. And then he left. 3 weeks later, on January 24th, he came back. Different posture, different confidence, learning the house, learning the camera, learning Nancy's pattern. And then, on the night of January 31st, after Tommaso drove away and that garage door sealed shut, he did not move immediately. He waited. He controlled his timing with the same precision he controlled every other variable in this operation. He chose 2 a.m. And there are 4 reasons that choice makes complete operational sense. Each one tells you something different about who this person is. The first reason is the simplest. He waited for the house to go completely silent. Nancy Guthrie had just returned from a 4-hour Saturday evening dinner at her daughter Annie's house. She was 84 years old. She had a documented, consistent weekly routine. Every Saturday, dinner with Annie, the ride home, the garage door closing, the house settling in for the night. But a house does not go silent the moment a garage door closes. Lights move from room to room. A television turns on, then off. A bedroom light dims and stays dim. From any position with a clear sight line to that property, and this suspect had already identified those sight lines on January 11th and January 24th, a patient observer reads those signals without ever stepping onto the property. He did not need to be inside. He needed to watch. A living room light turning off. A hallway light going dark. A bedroom window dimming to nothing. That sequence takes time for an 84-year-old woman settling in after a long evening out. He gave it exactly the time it needed. He did not guess when she would be asleep. He watched until he knew. The second reason is physiological. And this is the detail that changes everything about how you understand this crime. 2 a.m. is not a random hour. FBI behavioral analysis and decades of criminological research have documented that the window between 1:30 and 3 a.m. represents the lowest point of human vigilance in a standard sleep cycle. Reaction time is at its statistical slowest. The probability that someone wakes fully and responds effectively to an unexpected sound is at its absolute minimum. Core body temperature drops. Cognitive function is suppressed. The body's circadian rhythm at that specific hour works against the person sleeping inside the house and entirely in favor of the person moving outside it. Former NYPD Inspector Joseph Giacalone, who has spoken publicly about this case, has confirmed that offenders who plan residential entries at this level of sophistication consistently select the 2 a.m. window. It is not theoretical. It is documented across hundreds of cases in the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. This suspect did not arrive at 2 a.m. because of traffic or circumstance. He arrived at 2 a.m. because he understood human biology well enough to exploit it. The third reason is logistical, and it connects to something investigators confirmed just this week. A glove was recovered 2 miles from Nancy's home. A Ring camera 2.6 miles away captured footage at 2:36 a.m., just 8 minutes after her pacemaker lost its signal. That means someone moved through that neighborhood on a specific route that night. That route required a vehicle staged in a location that would not draw attention at 10 p.m., but would remain accessible and invisible at 2 a.m. It required an approach path already walked and mapped on January 11th and January 24th. The FBI is now specifically asking neighbors about contractors, construction workers, landscapers, and service personnel who had access to the Catalina foothills in the weeks before the abduction. NewsNation and Newsweek both confirmed that investigative direction this week. Someone spent 4 hours near that property on the night of January 31st and generated 0 calls, 0 alerts, 0 concern from a single resident. In a neighborhood where Aldine Meister noticed a man with his hat pulled low simply walking down the street on a January morning. He was near that house for 4 hours, and nobody called. That silence has an explanation, and the FBI is looking for it right now. The fourth reason is one that investigators have not addressed publicly, and it may be the most calculated detail of all. Nancy Guthrie takes daily medication. Sheriff Nanos stated this in the first press conference and has repeated it in every update since. Her medication has been described as critical to her survival, critical enough that it became the central argument for the life or death urgency of this case. Nancy has a pacemaker. She manages chronic conditions that are common in 84-year-old patients. If that medication includes anything that affects sleep depth or neurological alertness, and medication of that profile is extremely common in elderly patients managing cardiac and chronic conditions, then 2 a.m. is not simply the optimal hour for an intruder. It is the window when that medication, taken at a standard evening hour, would be at its deepest pharmacological effect. The sedative impact of common cardiac, pain management, or anxiety medications peaks approximately 4 to 6 hours after ingestion. If Nancy took her evening medication between 8 and 10 p.m., which aligns with every documented routine in this case, then 2 a.m. falls directly inside the window of maximum pharmacological suppression. That possibility has not been raised publicly by any outlet, any analyst, or any press conference in 51 days. And it may be the most chilling calculation in this entire operation, because it means whoever planned this knew her medication schedule. Now stop and look at all 4 reasons together. The house goes dark. The body goes deep into sleep. The neighborhood goes blind. And the medication reaches peak effect. Any one of those reasons on its own explains why someone would wait 4 hours in the dark before moving. But this suspect did not rely on one advantage. He stacked all 4. He waited until every single variable aligned in his favor and against the woman sleeping inside that house. That is not impulsive behavior. That is not opportunity. That is operational planning at a level that former FBI agents are now calling unprecedented for a residential abduction case. He selected that 2 a.m. window the way he selected every other element of this crime. The gloves, the mask, the backpack, the holster, the walkie-talkie, the jammer that killed every camera in the neighborhood. With deliberation, with patience, and with a terrifying level of knowledge about the woman inside that home. Now look at what happened at the end of those 4 hours. 1:47 a.m. The doorbell camera disconnects from its network. Not a power failure, a network disconnect. The camera that has no active subscription, that cannot record, that loops and erases, goes dark at 1:47. 25 minutes later at 2:12 a.m., the camera's motion detection software logs a human presence at her front door. The camera cannot produce footage, but its motion sensor remained active, and it registered someone in its detection field. 25 minutes between disconnect and detection. That gap means he was already in motion before the sensor caught him. He entered the detection field from a direction and at a pace consistent with a controlled, staged approach. Not urgency, not panic, a sequence. Then, 2:28 a.m., 16 minutes after detection, Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker lost its connection to her phone. 16 minutes, from approach to departure. That is not someone improvising inside a house in the dark. That is someone executing a sequence they had rehearsed. And at 2:28 in the morning, the signal stopped. Nancy was gone. Stop for a moment. Nancy Guthrie had lived in that house since 1990. 35 years. That Saturday night had ended the way hundreds of Saturday nights before it had ended. Dinner with Annie, the ride home with Tommaso, the garage door closing, the quiet of the Arizona desert settling in around the home she had made for herself and her family for 3.5 decades. She had no warning. The camera on her door was not recording. No neighbor saw anything. No one called anything in. Whatever those 16 minutes contained, Nancy faced them alone, in a home she had every reason to believe was safe. She is 84 years old. She has been missing for 51 days. She requires daily medication that she has not had access to for 51 days. Every hour that passes without that medication is an hour her family cannot get back. And this weekend, the Guthrie family, including Savannah, issued a new public statement. CBS News, the BBC, NBC, and Fox News all carried it. Their words were clear, and they were direct. Someone knows something. No detail is too small. We cannot be in peace until she is brought home. That statement was not written for the media. It was written for the one person in Tucson who saw something that night and has not yet called. Night 4 is coming, and it covers the moment this investigation should have begun, but did not. Not at 1:47 a.m. when the camera went dark. Not at 2:28 a.m. when the pacemaker signal disappeared. At 12:03 in the afternoon on February 1st, 9 hours and 35 minutes after Nancy's pacemaker went silent. 9.5 hours before anyone picked up a phone and called 911. What happened in those 9 hours and what they cost this investigation, that is night 4. The FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Anonymous. Completely confidential. The combined reward is now $1.2 million. If you were in the Catalina foothills on the night of January 31st and you saw something, a vehicle, a person, a van that seemed out of place, a light that should not have been on, the FBI needs to hear from you. Not tomorrow, now, because 51 days have passed, and somebody out there knows exactly what happened at 2 a.m.